Alright, so between 4th and 5th grade, my mom's sister and I moved to East Lansing because my mom was going to go back to get her PhD in education. And we lived in a 2-bedroom place. I shared a bunk with my sister right around the time that I was beginning to masturbate, so it was horrible timing in terms of having privacy. A bunk bed just doesn't work too well. And we lived right next door. Our bedroom was next door to some kid named Damien, and his mom would scream all the time, "Damien!" and you could really hear it through the walls. And that was, the Omen was out by that point. Damien the Omen was the name of the kid, was Damien. And it was just really uncomfortable there. I remember once I left, I felt like my sister was poking through my stuff, like my little personal area or whatever. So I left a little nasty note and put it upside down or something on my desk, figuring that if she looked for it, that she would, you know, that would get her for peeking at my stuff. So she did see it, she did find it and look at it, and went complaining to our mom, who said that what I was doing was similar to what was being done in Russia. Family members turning on family members and stuff, and I thought that was a little harsh. But it was the Cold War at the time. And in 5th grade, this was my first time being the new kid. And one of the popular kids decided to challenge his turf, I guess, when I was there. And after recess came up behind me and was bouncing a kickball on my head. And it really triggered me. This may be the only time that I punched somebody, but I turned and I punched him and he fell back into a bush like it was a little comedy for kids or something like that. And then I heard through one of his friends that he challenged me to have a fight after school. And although I was reactive in that moment, I've basically always been a pacifist, so I knew he would be taking the bus, so I just laid low until his bus was gone, and hung out by my locker or somewhere to make sure, and then it blew over. And about 2 years later, or a year later, he was in an accident playing with fireworks, and he lost some of his fingers. And I remember like him being really humble on the last day of the next year of school, and saying, "Hey Chris, how's it going?" And it was intense. It kind of made me feel like the universe was protecting me too. Don't hurt me. You lose part of your hand that hurts me. And in 6th grade, also in 5th grade, a couple kids came over to my house from school. I didn't really know them too well. Yeah, I didn't really have any close friends, I don't think, that year. Maybe one. And yeah, I had one close friend. And the other 2 kids I didn't know too well, they came over to my place, asked me to come outside to this dumpster area that was fenced in. And then I went back there with them, and I'm like, "What's this all about?" They have some big question or something they want to talk about. And they asked if my penis got hard. Because apparently they were also going through that experience, and mine just had started, you know, within the prior few months or whatever that they asked me. So it was really weird, but I guess developmentally these things can happen at a similar time. But I was embarrassed and I didn't want to talk about it, so I was like, "No," and I made it sound like there was something weird about it. Projected my own shame. So that was kind of a weird thing. But in 6th grade, still lived in this little tiny 2-bedroom apartment. But I kind of liked the vibe of a college town. Yeah, I was horribly alienated at school and just really did not fit in. And was very isolated, hung out with some real misfits, and going to middle school was pretty overwhelming. So 6th grade was pretty rough. I remember sitting outside and we were drawing, for an art class we were drawing some little natural scenes, and I was sitting on a stump, and somebody was drawing the stump I was sitting on, and some girl made fun of my butt. And my butt was just a normal 11-year-old butt, but I really felt self-conscious about that. And in general, I just felt a lot of self-consciousness and awkwardness. My family moved in with another family between 6th and 7th grade, and so it was myself, mom, sister, and a friend of my mom, a woman, and her daughter. So it was myself and 4 females. I lived in the basement. They were all upstairs on the 2nd floor. And I liked the house we lived in, and it was pretty comfortable. I remember beforehand my mom saying something like, some of the kids, you know, might say things about our living situation, us living with this family, but I want you to know it's not true. And I figured out later, I didn't understand it at the time, but she was saying that they might think, kids might say that my mom and her friend were lesbians, and that that was a family that was, you know, a non-traditional family instead of people trying to save money on rent, but they weren't. They weren't lesbians. It wasn't that interesting. So after a year in that house, we moved again. My mom didn't want us to go to school where she worked, where she commuted to in the thumb of Michigan. So we lived in Bay City with my grandma at first, and then got our own place. And then it was like a major culture shift for me, because I went from being very unpopular, very isolated and awkward, to moving to a school where my cousin, who was fairly popular, went. And she introduced me to friends. I got to know some people, felt more confidence. I was on the started on the basketball team, and in 8th grade you'd play in front of the whole school. Like, it wasn't like an after-school thing. It was like kids would get out of class, and so you're playing in front of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, everyone. And so I started to feel more confident and comfortable, but at the same time wasn't comfortable enough to date somebody I was attracted to. I remember on the bus being talked into going to some roller skating thing, and a friend of mine showing me some girl. He's like, Cindy's going to be there, and look how beautiful she is. And she was really cute. But while there, a girl that I wasn't really attracted to asked me to go steady or whatever, and I just did. I just kind of felt like I did have to. And it was weird. And so we had an awkward relationship for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months or something. And then one day, I think we kissed a few times here and there, but the whole thing was just awkward and weird. And I remember one day, we rode the same bus to school as well, and she was all dressed up one day in a really fancy red dress, and then she broke up with me in the hallway. She dressed up in a red dress to break up with me. It was like a formal event. And around that same time, I got caught shoplifting towards the end of the 8th grade, and it was horrible. My uncle was the sheriff in town, and he came into the back room of 7-Eleven where I was held. And then I remember driving home and thinking, oh, I gotta tell my mom about this, or my uncle will, or whatever. And then the girl that I had dated just started dating my friend, and it was just really like a dark day. And but yeah, I'd shoplifted for a while. Candy, it was kind of a thing amongst my peers. But during that summer, I decided to let go of a lot of the relationships that I had been hanging out with, including the guys that I would, you know, compare shoplifting notes with or whatever. And that led to a transition which I will get into next time, which was the beginning of high school. Same school. Instead of Bay City Western Middle School, it was Bay City Western High School. But I had a new focus without hanging out with some of the popular kids that were also a bad influence, I guess. I was also drinking a lot in 8th grade. I would drink to get pass out drunk. It was the most that I drank, probably with the exception of my freshman year at Michigan Tech, and any other year, because I've never been a big drinker. But in 8th grade, I would spend a lot of Sundays hungover. My mom would pick me up, and I must have smelled, but she was conflict avoidant, so she didn't really say anything about that stuff, except for a time I got caught. when she came home from a friend's place early, and I was having a party, and I was passed out drunk, and she couldn't wake me up, and it was tumultuous times, all that transition. Oh, and one last thing, lots of stomach problems. I would get sick, sometimes throw up, cramping stomach so much, because I think it was a lot of social anxiety about all the moves and all those years and adjustments all the time. So tummy troubles, that was a big thing at that time too. Alright, thanks for listening.